Hi everyone, Peter Cap here, and welcome to another episode of Peter's No Cap History, the show where I combine my loves of history and fantasy to provide potential points of inspiration for aspiring fantasy artists, writers, and world builders. Now today's going to be a little bit different, what with Godshards the Uniter coming out. I want to make this episode tie into that, because as I've said many times before, I take cues from a lot of ancient and medieval history in my fantasy stories, in my fantasy universe. I feel like it's prudent to make a video like this to put my money where my mouth is. Godshards the Uniter is very heavily based on ancient Rome. As a result, for this episode of Peter's No Cap History, I'm going to talk about 3 different ways the Roman Republic inspired Godshards the Uniter, particularly in this case the Republic of Primus. Let's get to it. Number 1, the system of government. This is pretty straightforward stuff here. Primus is a republic. Specifically, it's based off the Roman Republic, so as a result, there's many positions of government that are very similar to their Roman counterparts. Like senators, like patricians. One kind of politician you see mentioned a few times are tribunes, particularly tribunes of the plebs. Officers and lower-ranking officials that, represent the plebeians, which are more the average everyday Roman citizens. They had veto power over the senators and like. They're mentioned in a few places. It's pretty straightforward. Another prominent position I mentioned quite a bit is that of the consulship. The consulship is the highest position in the Roman Republic, and there was 2 of them. Again, because of the idea of the Romans not wanting to have one person wielding so much power, the consuls had veto power over the others. These people would be elected, and their terms would be a year. And as for Godshards the Uniter, Clodius Decimus is a consul of war. There were some slight differences to how I set up the consuls, because, like I said, consuls in the Roman Republic were 1 year, and consulships in the Republic of Primus were 10 years. I did that for a few reasons. It kind of makes things a little bit easier for Clodius, for certain things in the story. There's also one major difference between the Roman Republic and the Republic of Primus, in the sense that the Romans were very much against kings and monarchs, and they expressly drove them out, versus the Republic of Primus, where the reason why they became a republic is for different reasons in different contexts. So they're not as adverse to having people in charge for longer like that. Number 2, the architecture. Again, pretty straightforward stuff. Roman civilization's known for a lot of its stone buildings, a lot of its arches, aqueducts, which are mentioned specifically in a couple different points. Like, the Roman civilization was incredible in terms of its architectural feats and wonders, and I definitely embrace that. And I also make sure to not go for certain stereotypes either, because contrary to what you see in a lot of media, the Roman cities were not just these white stone hells. They had a lot of color. Marketplaces were teeming with color. Many of these stone buildings and marble stuff were painted. Mosaics were a thing, which is going to have an episode in its own right. You know what I mean? Like, there was a ton of color and beauty in the Roman Republic, and I made sure to reflect that in Primus. And then lastly, with number 3, and this one's probably going to come off as absolutely no surprise, the Roman military. Again, this is probably no surprise. I love military history. The Roman military machine is very legendary, and rightfully so. While the technological difference between the Romans and some of their neighbors is a bit exaggerated sometimes, the Romans definitely stood out in many respects. Peerless engineers, very good at making fortifications and digging earthworks and stuff, which is something that I feature in one spot in Godshards the Uniter with the legions of Primus. The Roman war machine was very disciplined. There were a lot of formations and tactics that these soldiers and legionnaires used, including stuff like the testudo, which is a great way of protecting legions from missile attacks. The common thing you see in a lot of ancient armies of throwing javelins, like en masse, to soften up an enemy force before going in for the charge, or for bracing for an attack. Like, these were all staples of the Roman military machine, and they are absolutely staples of the Republic of Primus as well. Another little thing that also comes from this is the Marian reforms, because the Roman military machine had several reforms over its long history. One notable reform was the Marian reforms by the General Marius. And there were some crucial changes and reforms that came from this, and one big difference was anyone who wanted to serve in the Roman military could serve, versus before where you had to be a landowner. I integrated this a little bit in the Republic of Primus, with a similar reform being passed by Clodius to help raise some legions quicker, just due to some stuff that you see in the climax of the book. So yeah, that's basically it. This is very brief and very broad. But yeah, those are 3 different ways the Roman Republic inspired the Republic of Primus. Just as a reminder, Godshards the Uniter comes out this Friday. Hope to see you there.